All right, so we are on Luke chapter 22, trying to finish off the Gospel of Luke today. So here we are, April 27th.
It feels weird being back on 22 now. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Now the feast of unleavened bread, called the Passover, was approaching. And the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12. And Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover." "Where do you want us to prepare for it?" they asked. He replied, "As you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house that he enters, and say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks, where is the guest room, where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large upper room, all furnished. Make preparations there." They left and found things just as Jesus had told them, so they prepared the Passover. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God." After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, "Take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink again of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes." And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on this table. The Son of Man will go as it has been decreed, but woe to that man who betrays him." They began to question among themselves which of them it might be who would do this. Also a dispute arose among them as to which of them was considered to be greatest. Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. You are those who have stood by me in my trials, and I confer on you a kingdom, just as my Father conferred one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail, and when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." But he replied, "Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death." Jesus answered, "I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny 3 times that you know me." Then Jesus asked them, "When I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything?" "Nothing," they answered. He said to them, "But now, if you have purse, take it, and also a bag, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. It is written, 'And he was numbered with the transgressors,' and I tell you that this must be fulfilled in me. Yes, what is written about me is reaching its fulfillment." The disciples said, "See, Lord, here are 2 swords." "That is enough," he replied.
Let's stop there, because then we just talk about the Last Supper bit first.
I had forgotten this bit about Jesus asking them to buy a sword or plural swords here. I mean, I remember Peter using said sword to cut off an ear, but I had forgotten that Jesus actually requested that they be armed.
Yeah, so I have a note that says this is to fulfill Isaiah 50. Let me look at it. Isaiah 53:12. And this is surely he's borne our infirmities and carried our diseases. That it's that passage that a lot of people think is about Jesus. And verse 12 says, "Therefore I will allot him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out himself to death and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressions." Well, that doesn't say anything about a sword. Come on now. Oh, well.
I've always taken this as he's saying things are about to get real, and so you're going to have
Yeah.
to prepare for really nasty stuff about to happen.
Yeah.
You know, the war is coming,
Yeah.
basically. Whether he meant that literally or not is always a open question with pretty much anything Jesus says.
Yes, that's true.
Well, we'll see that when violence happens, Jesus shuts it down.
Yeah, that's the other thing that
So this could be, the note I said is it's a symbolic of preparedness, but limited symbolic arming. But yeah, who knows? It's a little odd.
And evidently they already were armed, too.
Just
They
a
said,
little
"Wait,
bit.
look here.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Is this good?
Funny you asked
got
that. Yes.
I think it was pretty common
It's like,
for
yes,
people
Master, we got some.
to have some kind of a blade with them because
Oh, yeah.
when you're walking around, if bandits,
Mhm.
you just to defend yourself, I think it was pretty normal.
At the same
Animals
time,
too.
Animals,
Oh, yeah.
Of
there you
course.
go.
You know,
Yeah,
snakes, whatever. you
yeah, definitely.
know.
I'm sure everybody had a knife, too.
Mhm.
You needed it for eating, for one thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, a sword, you really need to practice with that to be effective with it.
I don't know if it means the soldier's sword. It could be a long blade. I don't know. It'd be
Mhm.
interesting to look at,
Yeah.
but I would think it would just be whatever was normal for people to have. And yeah, you were gonna say something.
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think
okay.
so. You're just used to me always putting it.
So, I've never been a fan of the couple times when the gospel says things like, Satan entered into Judas. I don't like that for many reasons because it really demonizes Judas.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
but in Aramaic, the Satan is that which we cannot see, that which we're not looking at,
Oh.
which can be the shadow side of things. And so one way of looking at this is sort of saying that the deep unconscious motivations that Judas has not been willing to look at
Mm-hmm.
is taking over him now, and that's what's putting him in a position to do something that he wouldn't normally do, which he later regrets. So in that way, we can take it as a literal, or we can take it as sometimes that happens. We're overtaken by our most unconscious desires, and we do or say something in the moment. We're like, where did that come from?
I mean,
It's like what some of the kids say these days is listening to the, what's the word? Oh, now I can't think of the word I was going to say. You go ahead, because while I try to think of what I was going to say.
I was going to say, I mean, even earlier, Jesus, I mean, in this reading, Jesus was saying that Satan was demanded that he sift all of you like wheat, and there was that section when they were walking together, and Jesus, when they were suggesting that Jesus not go to Jerusalem, he says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." I mean, anytime that the devil is, they get tempted or they get thoughts that draw away from his plans. He was known to say that kind of the Satan creeping in there,
Yeah.
whether that be the dark side of their own psyche or the deceiver working on them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are themselves demonic. It's just that they're being tempted, they're being misled by that dark force that wanted to thwart God's plan.
I thought I was going to say intrusive thoughts. It's letting the
Intrusive
yeah.
thoughts.
That's what the kids say these days a lot.
Intrusive
Yeah.
thoughts, yeah.
Because we all have them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're very normal.
Yeah.
It's what do you do about them? And every now and again,
Yeah.
we'll make a bad decision because of them.
Mhm.
What's the scale of that bad
Yeah.
decision going to be?
And we're
It
all
might be
entitled-
like Judas, and you go, "Oh my goodness, what did I do?"
Yes.
We're
I didn't think it
all
was gonna be
entitled
that
to making mistakes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but I think that we see all the characters play out in these stuff, and we are every one of these characters.
Yeah.
We're all Judas. I mean,
Been there.
my
Yeah.
God, how many times do we deny God? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think every one of these characters are put in there for us to see it in us for ourselves, not to go look at the Judas.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. It's a look at the Judas in us. You know, how can we work with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point.
They're
That
all
was
there
the-
to teach us a lesson. It's not so they don't be a Judas. It's the when are you being a Judas?
And what can you? How can you avoid being a certain part of Judas, and what to look out for, protect
Yes.
ourselves and our neighbor from ourselves.
Someone should write a play about how you become different characters and experience their
And
feelings.
Yeah. Only a fool would do such a thing.
yeah.
Aren't
No,
we all?
I think, but that's exactly the point. Is I think it's a very
Yeah.
introductory
The world is scared.
Christianity
Mhm.
to read this story and to go, yes, I would always love Jesus because he's so great. These people were so dumb. That's like base level. And then as you mature and you read these stories, you know, you realize that we play all of these different parts. And if you see, okay, the Pharisees were not bad human beings. What were they thinking that would allow them to behave in the way they did? And are there ways in which we've behaved like that? And in what circumstance would we be like Judas, feeling like we were doing the right thing? Or in what circumstance would we be like Peter, where we were just so scared in the moment that we didn't tell the truth because self-preservation was more important? And only later do you realize that that's what you were doing. And yeah.
The Pharisees you bring up, that I think they're quite an interesting thing because, I mean, a lot of those Pharisees were probably born into that society exactly, you know, and this is what the, you know, people behind them and that's all they learned and stuff, you know, and I mean, for them not to be
Yeah.
that way would be
True.
abnormal,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, if you've been born and raised and you've heard this is what Christianity is, and then you go to a church or you hear online or somebody shares something that talks about Christianity being different, you know, you might feel very much like you want to attack that person. This happens all the time with pastors of mega churches who all of a sudden realize that maybe the black and white thinking that they were teaching for so long isn't right, and they start to shift their message, and then a lot of times they get ousted
Absolutely.
because that's not what people want to hear. And for them, the gospel of Jesus is this very particular packaged box, and that's, they believe, has been the same for 2,000 years. It hasn't. This box has been around since 1972, right? But that's what they think it is, and they are going to reject anyone who doesn't believe that.
I totally agree because I remember I was just my big moments that just happened to me. I just had one recently. I was reading this kid's book on people of different faith. It was Islam deal and stuff like that, and it's telling it a kid's deal. And okay, so they have a God. They have a prophet, and the other people involved, you know, like this. And I'm going, wow, that sounds familiar to me. You know, we've got a God, you know, we call ours the son of. People just call it different things, you know, and like this. And I'm going, when we close our mind to our package, what are we doing? That to me, it just all of a sudden scared me. And you preach about it all the time. You do. Sometimes I listen, you know. But
Sometimes.
I think it's weird. I think it's just arrogance to think that you own how God is.
Well, how convenient. How convenient that you happen to be born in the right time, in the right country, in the right church,
It's just
in the right
obvious.
belief, to have it all figured out. And the last thing I'll say, and then we can move on, but I talk to enough people that I meet fundamentalists of lots of different religions.
Mm-hmm.
And the
That'd be
irony is when a fundamentalist Hindu or Muslim or atheist
Mm-hmm.
sounds just like a fundamentalist Christian,
Mm-hmm.
where they do some proof of why they're right and everyone else is so stupid, and it just all sounds the same. And I thought, this is really ironic.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
fascinating.
it is.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, we have to realize that we are as likely to be wrong as everyone else. We've been
Yes.
following teachings that have been passed down for thousands of years, much like the other faiths.
Yeah.
How do we think that we are more accurate than the others? Well, we think we're following the Son of God. But what if we're not? If we look at the consistencies between these faiths, we can boil things down to the fundamental teachings that we're all trying to say at the top of our lungs over each other. We're really not that blinking different.
We're not. The similarities are just incredible. You know, you're praising a power greater than yourself. Okay?
The power by which things were made to be.
Yep.
Whether that, and I mean, I liked the way you pointed out how Hinduism isn't all that dissimilar to Christianity, because I thought it was one of those things that was so different with all these different gods, and
Yeah.
I didn't realize that they were meant to be different paths to the source. And knowing that
Yeah.
there's that
Yeah.
source aspect to Hinduism, it's like, oh, okay, so yeah, they're singing the same song after all.
Kind of like the Catholic
Yeah.
Church.
I mean, it.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. It is very different in a way where you can feel like you're in a alien planet. And yet the truths underneath what you see, feel, and hear are the same. So I don't want to discount how very different it can feel. You know, when I was in this inner court temple of Shiva and the priest was chanting and there were, you know, I didn't know what the heck was going on. It was so foreign. I mean, it was all in Sanskrit, and everything that was happening was nothing like anything that I've ever experienced. And yet, asking about what was going on and knowing what the god Shiva represents, and even in the end, when there's like 15 minutes of clanging a bell and ringing a drum, that was meant to evoke in you a physical reaction, so that anything that needed transformation would start to come up,
Yeah.
so that you could have transforming and healing. Which is, so the themes underneath the external forms are universal, but the external forms can be very, very odd to one another, right?
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that's a really. Anyway, let's keep moving.
Yeah.
You want to finish
We
reading?
can really get off on this one.
I know.
Oh yeah, we
can.
could spend
We can
hours and
finish it.
hours and hours, and we don't have hours.
Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives. As usual, okay. And his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation." While he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man, who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour, when darkness reigns." Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance, but when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him." But he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You are also one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, "Prophesy, who hit you?" And they said many other insulting things to him. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Christ," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me, and if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" He replied, "You are right in saying I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips." It's a weird spot for a chapter. Should I keep going?
Sure. Just a little bit more, maybe.
Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payments of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they insisted, "He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here." On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased, because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform some miracle. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore I will punish him and then release him." With one voice they cried out, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us!" Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" For the 3rd time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I will have him punished and then release him." But with loud shouts they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will.
Okay. Yeah, that's a better stopping point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta wonder who came up with the chapter breaks.
I know.
'Cause I know it
Much
wasn't the people who
later.
wrote the original
No,
text.
No.
It's like the people who come up with cliffhangers sometimes. It's like,
It's still better than the commercial breaks in YouTube videos.
yeah, those are really abrupt.
Terrible. Yeah.
Couple things that we may not think about very much. For the Pilate and his court, this would be very Gentile territory, and the chief priests would be kind of unclean to go up to it and be in Pilate's court and talking with him, which is normally something they wouldn't want to do, especially around the Passover.
Yeah.
So they kind of do something unholy in some ways, like according to their custom. Like the trial in the middle of the night on the night after Passover is not a legal trial, and then doing this, like the irony is they're pushing the boundaries of their own religion
Oh.
to make sure that Jesus gets seen by Pilate. And there's this theory that I've heard a lot of people say, and it's not like it's terrible or wrong, but it's like the same people who are shouting Hosanna on Palm Sunday are the exact same people who just happen to be outside of Pilate's court, who now were like, crucify him. And in reality, there were tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people in Jerusalem at the time. And only a few of them would have been excited about Jesus when he was coming in and following him in there.
Yeah.
And chances are, this early in the morning, the night after Passover, they were probably with their families and hearing about his crucifixion later. To me, it's just interesting because, yeah, the old belief sort of talks about how fickle we are.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, this sort of just shows like these people didn't maybe have strong opinions about Jesus either way, but they were incited by the religious leaders who were part of the group to shout to let Barabbas go free.
I'm sure there were factions too. And this may have just been people who they were probably Barabbas fans. And they were like, well, if you kill this guy, then we can get the other guy that we actually want.
Yeah. And it's hard to know exactly what the customs were. Like, who were these people and why were they there? Like, was there some sort of announcement made in the city? Hey, does anyone want to hear what Pilate's going to do with Jesus? Then maybe some of those, people came who were like, ooh, gossip. Ooh, this is exciting. I don't know.
So Pilate, sorry.
I would say, wasn't there some sort of festival? There was Passover going on.
Yeah.
It was and with all the pilgrims coming into Jerusalem, I imagine it was much like a festival. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
it's not like they were all hunkering down in their homes, putting the lamb's blood over their doors. They probably did before they headed home. We headed off to this event, maybe. But I mean, it was a long walk for many of them. They were staying at inns and whatnot, and
Yeah.
checking out
Yeah.
Yeah.
all the things that were going on. I'm sure the
Yeah.
officials like Pontius Pilate were having public appearances to rally support as politicians do these days.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he was in Jerusalem in the first place, was because the festival was such a big thing, and he was there to show it, impress, to be powerful, to show how powerful he was, just in case people got ideas. And so the irony is, crucifying somebody who is said to be a rebellion would be exactly what Pilate would want to do. So the story that Pilate was, I don't know, is really just most likely fiction. In reality, Pilate is not the kind of person to be wishy-washy about crucifying someone, especially someone who is being charged with potential insurrection.
Especially a Roman too. They were not
Yeah.
shy.
Yeah.
A Roman.
Yeah, this one doesn't talk about his wife's dream or whatever,
No, that was in Matthew. I think we looked that up.
because that would
Tuesday.
explain a little more why if he was reticent.
Yeah, maybe. In honesty, I think that the reason why the Christian writers didn't put it on Pilate and the Romans was because they didn't want the narrative that Romans, these baddies who we hate anyway, killed Jesus, but rather we did. And remember, they still were related to the Jews.
Yes.
They still considered themselves Jewish Christians. So this awful narrative that came later, this anti-Semitic narrative, that it's like the Jewish people, was not the intention of the writers. It was our religious leaders. In John, anytime they say the word the Jews, they mean the Jewish leaders. So our people did this, which fits in way better when you think about
Yeah.
what's going on in our country and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're the ones that allow crucifixions to happen to our own.
So Pilate is a Gentile, more of a political guy,
Mm-hmm.
and Herod is a Jew. He's more of like a church guy, right? Or like the
He's-
religious
He's a
leader.
secular leader,
He's a secular, yeah.
but he is a Jew.
Oh, he's not.
Yeah.
Oh, but he's not. Okay, he's not officially part of the church.
Yeah,
No, he was put on the throne by Caesar, which is why a lot of people hate that family, because they see them as basically puppets.
Okay.
and
They're
you,
not really.
you were saying that here, we talked a few weeks ago about this, and you were saying that this Herod was it the son or the
Yeah.
grandson of the Herod that
Yeah.
Yeah.
had sent out the soldiers
Killed
to kill
babies,
all
yeah.
the babies, trying to smite this this baby that he had heard about
Yeah.
born on
Like a
Christmas
lot of
morning.
other families, they have hand-me-down names.
Yeah, exactly. So it's two Herods in a row. It's the Herod.
There's
Yeah.
got to be a joke in there somewhere.
Well,
Yeah.
last names, I mean, could have been.
Herod on to
Oh, that's
blasphemy.
funny.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is the other one, and he's an interesting character, right? Because he seems sort of fascinated with John the Baptist, but doesn't have the spine to say no when his wife wants him killed, and he even seems curious here about Jesus. He's like,
He wanted to meet him.
he wanted to meet him, was hoping he'd perform a sign. What you got, Jesus?
One wonders what he was really like, but he's definitely not painted favorably in the Bible.
No,
They
I
portray
don't
him as a real
think that they were.
twit.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I
Uncle
don't.
Brian.
Well, and it
Yes.
says that those two hated each other before this. They were enemies, and then they became friends on this day. That's a weird passage, too.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
that's
also
another
painted
one.
badly too, because he's
Right.
he's friends with a Roman.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the Roman governor.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Icky.
Roman cooties.
I guess the last thing I'll throw in there was Peter about him denying, and I'm just thinking about the culture right now and all the people who are afraid and need protection. And there's this book called On Tyranny, and one of the first things is it's a handbook on how to, resist tyranny, and the first one is don't obey in advance. And it's this idea of, okay, scary things are happening. I am going to try to predict and just like keep myself out of trouble, keep my nose clean right away, therefore not do anything. So then the tyranny
Yeah.
already starts to win because people are automatically stopping what they were doing before just because they're worried about what you might do. And so the first rule is don't
Oh,
obey in
yeah.
advance. To me, when I hear Peter denying Jesus out of self-preservation, I think about all the ways in which people around the world obey in advance.
Yeah.
Instead of, and it's understandable when you're afraid.
Yeah.
He was afraid. What could happen to me if I say, he's talking to servants,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't know if they're going to go, oh
Go
my
rat him
gosh,
out.
hey, him too. It takes a lot of courage to say, no, we're going to continue to put things on the sign, right? We're going to continue to preach and to go about our life before this exact same way we did before. Maybe some things have to be more covert. Maybe we have to be stronger in other ways, but to not just say, oh, we might get in trouble, therefore.
I think it's what's going on here today. It's our responsibility as white Americans to pay back to this country to put ourselves out there. I think it's really, really important for
Yeah, I think
us
so.
to do this because it's always had to been before the people that were being prosecuted or being persecuted that had to do this. If we don't do it, and we got the least to lose, we're way out of deal. Again, I step out of
No.
that
No,
area,
you're right.
but it is, yeah.
They have Bain in advance. It's like all the
Yeah.
companies immediately pulled back from their DEI initiatives, and nobody asked them to.
No.
They just did. There's no law saying they have to do it.
Yeah.
No directive from the government.
Yeah.
They're just anticipating.
And they can save money or something, maybe they think.
Yeah.
And so,
It's
We're-
no skin off their backs.
We're seeing that now. We're seeing the companies, the politicians, the people that folded without even being asked to, and those that are stepping up to be as part of the rebellion.
I mean, I can understand a little more some of the educational institutions who are like, oh, I'm going to lose huge amounts of funding, but Target, they had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But they folded right away.
Yeah.
Like a house.
but Harvard then,
Harvard didn't. No, they're
Harvard
fighting.
didn't.
They're like $2 billion from.
He's
gonna hit my
he's
lawyers.
gonna take everything away from Harvard. So
a lot of
come on, do
Well,
it.
what is Harvard most famous for? Their law school.
Yeah.
And they have this school, this portion of their school is dedicated to law. They have all people know what's going on is not right. And they've got the students and the professors who would love to write some lovely papers on this. And,
And
This might be
have
somebody's
a
thesis
lot of
project, you
fun.
know?
we were right.
A lot of theses are going to be written about, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
As we digress again.
As we digress, yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to start us at 26 and keep going? Verse
Oh.
26?
Verse
there
26.
now?
As they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the country, and they laid the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A great number of the people followed him, and among them were women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For the days are surely coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.'
Oh.
For if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?"
Yeah.
2 others also, who were criminals, were led away to be put to death with him. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they cast lots to divide his clothing. The people stood by watching, but the leaders scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others, let him save himself if he is the Messiah of God, his chosen one."
Oh, yeah.
The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine and saying, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There's also an inscription over him saying, "This is the king of the Jews." One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him, saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise."
Oh.
It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until about 3 in the afternoon, when the sun's light failed and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly this man was innocent." And when all the crowds who had gathered there for this spectacle saw what had taken place, they returned home beating their breasts. But all his acquaintances, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. Now there was a good and righteous man named Joseph, who, though a member of the council, had not agreed to their plan and action. He came from the Jewish town of Arimathea, and he was waiting expectantly for the kingdom of God. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down and wrapped it in linen cloth and laid it in a rock-hewn tomb where no one had ever been laid. It was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed, and they saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment.
Okay. What do we think about meeting next week to finish 24? Because I don't think it's going to happen today.
Yeah.
But then we can
No.
just talk about what we just read.
Sure.
No.
Otherwise it'd be a short week, but okay.
And we can talk about what else, if there's anything else we want to.
Oh, that never
Just-
happens.
Sure.
I'm sure it'll be a super quiet week and there'll be nothing
Yeah,
yeah,
exciting
yeah.
going
There's nothing
on.
That's
to talk
adorable.
about.
I love
Yeah,
that.
Like, well, that was fun. See you later.
Yeah.
Sure, we can do that.
This interesting line 31, for if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry? I've never paid attention to that before. And to me, I thought that was interesting, is like, if people behave when things are okay this way, when the rubber hits the road, what are they going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is fascinating.
That jumped right out at me. When I heard that, I went,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's so now.
yeah.
No. So
Mhm.
no.
And I think my favorite verse in all the Gospels is, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's really, it's powerful in many ways, and one of the ways it's powerful is that all this hatred thrown at Jesus did not make him hateful. And to me, that's the ultimate show of power, is when no one can affect you. You know who you are, you know what you believe in. You know, like there's that phrase, look what you made me do, or
Yes.
or even like, well, you made me angry. And then you get irritated to hear psychologists and other spiritual people go, no one can make you angry. Well, yeah, but he did. In reality, you allowed that person to stir some unhealed part of you up, right?
Oh.
And it's like when you're 5 years old and you're young and you're so vulnerable, and another fellow 5-year-old goes, you poo-poo head, you're like,
Yes.
now if a 5-year-old walked up to me and said, you're a poo-poo head, I'd be like, that's adorable. What's happening here? Because they're not hitting some unhealed part of me or some unformed part of me that is that can be affected by that.
Yeah.
So imagine Jesus being so strong and integrated within himself that there's nothing that anyone can say that's going to force him to behave or feel in a way that's outside of his control. To me, that is like the most amazing show of power you could ever have.
A maturity.
Yeah.
Like maximum maturity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A maturity and a confidence and a maturity and your
Yeah.
deal and the maturity.
There's this.
Almost no one ever achieves that. I mean,
Yeah.
I know.
Well, we certainly don't have a lot of opportunity. Like, we don't make it a priority in our culture to cultivate that.
no.
There's a famous story that I heard about a warrior. It was a long time ago. I don't even know what country. And he's slaughtered and defeated everyone and everything, and he's so strong, and he goes up to this monastery, and all the monks run except for this one monk who just sits there. And the guy comes in and he laughs at the monk and he goes, don't you know that I could kill you without a thought? And the monk goes, don't you know that you could kill
I
me
see.
and I wouldn't have a thought?
No.
And in that moment, the soldier threw his sword down and walked away, and he's like, I have no power over this man. And to me, I feel like that's what Jesus is like. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
you're going to kill me and torture me. You're the ones who are crazy, and I'm not
Yeah.
gonna fall into your madness.
Yeah. This is one of the worst things that could possibly happen to a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't give up.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have the magnanimity. I don't know.
That's why we pray.
Yeah.
Give me the strength, knowledge, everything. I mean, I can't do that, but I know a guy that can.
I know a guy.
You know,
Nicely
Yeah.
put.
he can help me.
Yep.
You know,
I
he
know
can
a
do-
guy.
I know a guy. I do.
You're just putting that as a bumper sticker and people going, eh? But of course you know the context.
Yeah.
I just
know a
got
guy.
I got a shirt for my birthday that says, I can't, but I know a guy.
Oh my God.
It's great.
Oh,
I
that's
love
great.
that.
That's
I
good.
can't,
It
but I
is.
know a guy.
Nice. Nice. Last words.
Struck by how the criminal the one that says, Jesus, remember me, he says that he deserves what's happening to him, but Jesus doesn't.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I don't feel like anybody deserves that.
No. No.
No matter what they've done, I don't think there's anything you could do that.
He's been shamed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably his whole life.
Yeah.
He accepts the punishment, but
Came from a family of robbers and crooks and stuff, and raised in a bad family, so he thinks that that's what he is, and
Yep.
society's told him that.
he grew up in a society where you don't do these things.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
It didn't anyway, and
that's-
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
nobody's trying to help him, just
Isaac believes in extreme corporal punishment.
terrible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When we were doing the play,